I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and co-owner of PurePleasureShop.com.
I'm April, VP of the cutting-edge sex toy company Hot Octopuss, and I dedicate my life to the business of sex.
We are on a mission to teach you how to have hot sex, deep intimacy, and how to make your own rules for who you are as a sexual being.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Revolution. Want to learn more? Go to shamelesssex.com.
And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use code SHAMELESSSEX at PurePleasureShop.com.
You were listening to a Pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone. That was so weird. This little robot just told us there was a recording in progress, and that's new. That was weird.
I know.
All right. Anyway,
did you hear that, Kelly?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I just heard that. I was so confused. I just assumed it was normal, but it's never happened to me before.
I've never heard this robot. It must be because we're recording at 9 a.m. our time and 5 p.m. your time, because Kelly is in London in the UK and we are here in California recording. April and I usually don't record before 10.
Probably noon. Noon is actually more of an accurate
thing,
because we have our morning, both of us have a morning routine.
I know. Your dog's about to hump your leg again. What a weird morning already. So there's a robot here. Kelly's not the robot though. April's dog is humping her leg. My dog is being extra weird. And hey, everyone.
It's a full moon. That's why.
Oh,
that's why it was a full moon.
Now all the people that don't like hippie shit tuned out. Fuck. Okay.
Full moons are full moons. Everybody knows the tides are.
Full moon is legit. Okay. That really messes me up. I had some crazy dreams last night, but this isn't about me, everyone. Welcome to the Shameless Sex Podcast. This is your bonus episode. And what does that mean? It means that we're extra crazy. No, that's not what it means. It means that there are no ads in this episode. We have ads in other episodes. Why? Because, well, we need to eat, and this takes a lot of time and energy, and we love to do this, but we also need to have ads to keep it going. And we also want to offer you some bonus content where you can tune out of the ads and just learn and listen and be entertained. So this episode is with Kelly, who also has a podcast called the Pleasure Rebels podcast. And we're here to talk about sex toys and hot sex with disabilities. And without further ado, we'll just dive on in. So Kelly, we start with the same question for all of our listeners. Tell us about yourself and the work that you do around sex and disability.
Okay, so my name's Kelly Gordon. I am at Hot Octopuss. I run the show Pleasure Rebels for the brand. And I also work with the company to make sure that they're super inclusive and help them around their work, product development and marketing for people with disabilities. And I got into that really because it just felt like natural progression for me. I've been into sex and sex toys from a young age. I was always quite rebellious. I'm a wheelchair user, so I kind of used sexuality as my way to kind of prove that I was quote unquote normal. So it just felt like the role for me. And yeah, I absolutely love it. Like it felt like I was made for this position. So
oh, we've been on your show, Pleasure Rebels. I was so excited when Hot Octopuss was talking about putting out a podcast, because obviously Adam's been on our show. Jules hasn't been on our show. Those are the founders. We should get her on our show. And I just have, I mean, it's like the merging of my loves, right? And when you were the host, I was like, I love Kelly because you're just a joy to speak with. So I'm happy that you're on Shameless Sex, Kelly.
Yes, I'm happy to be here as well.
And we're going to move into some questions here about language, because this can be kind of a difficult thing for folks out there that aren't knowing how to talk or speak to disability. What are things that folks should know about this? Is there language they should use, or is there up-to-date, accurate, supportive language that people prefer over other stuff? Is there anything that they should stay away from?
I think it's such a tricky question for me about language, because everybody is different, and I know that's not what people want to hear. There's identity first language, which would mean that I would say, for example, I'm a disabled person, and I'm cool with that. I'm absolutely happy with that, because I I identify as a disabled person. My disability is part of me. I'm proud of that. Some people prefer to be called a person with a disability, and that is like entirely personal preference. There's not really any right and wrong, is what I like to say to people. Obviously, if something's really, really bad and ill-intentioned, that's different. But if people are open to being educated and learning about disability and sort of preferences in terms of language, I don't think you can go far wrong with that. The one term that in the UK is a no, and it's quite an Americanized term, is handicapped, because that was actually associated with begging. So it's like hand in cap, handicapped, but that is quite an Americanized term that gets used a lot in the US. But in the UK, it's something that we don't really say. But really, it is just down to personal preference. And I think it's about being open and having those conversations with people as well. You know, like, I don't think people will take offense, and I certainly wouldn't, if somebody is open from the start and opens that line of conversation. It's better than being either ignored due to like fear of like an awkward kind of conversation, or just not being asked or not being talked to at all. So it is definitely a tricky one.
I know that we don't use handicapped here as much to describe folks with disabilities, but we still call the parking handicap parking.
And the bathrooms a lot of times
yeah,
too.
they do. Handicap accessible, right?
They're shifting a lot to accessible.
Yeah.
And that's something that I love about language and then people's comfortability. That's why we ask the question, because I don't want to say anything that would offend someone. And I didn't know the hand in cap thing. That's really interesting.
What did you say rule of thumb means?
Rule of thumb was...
Which is not related to what we're talking about, but still
it came from the length of the stick that you were legally allowed to beat your wife with.
But we still use it like the rule of thumb for this.
Yes,
it's
the
so
rule
funny.
of thumb.
So interesting when you learn about language and you're like, oh, this actually comes from a not so...
Or when people say, there's a lot of microaggression language that comes out that I used to say sit Indian style. That's how I grew up learning about sitting cross-legged. Yeah. Yes. Or when there's so many things out there that people don't even know that have really... I guess it's derogatory meaning. And why do we need to move away? It should just be accessible parking instead of, it still is called handicap parking.
Yeah. And we're still learning. And so I guess one question about that to add to this was, so if you want to have inclusive language, you don't really know how the person identifies. But I would imagine, and you say you'd rather the conversation not be ignored. You'd rather have someone talk to you. Is there a way that someone could actually, like, I guess I'll think of, we don't say preferred pronouns anywhere for the people the way they identify with their gender, but you would say, what pronouns do you use? But you wouldn't ask someone like, what's your disability? Or how do you identify with your disability? Like, how would you even go about that? I guess maybe it's something they don't even really need to comment on, but you still want to have the conversation.
Well, some people have actually started doing that now, and they've been asking if it's identity first or person first that you prefer. So that is an option. However, like you say, it can become long-winded and make people kind of, scared sometimes to broach that subject if they're not too sure what they're talking about. Another way I think that's great is to, include disabled consultants in your work. For example, if you're a business owner, but you want to speak to people on disability and disability related services or products, it's obviously best to be working with somebody that has experience in that and that is disabled. And a lot of people are guilty of asking disabled people to work for free or to give advice for free, and it's something that's common. It's something that people still do to me because they assume that like you either don't want to work or you aren't like wishing to be paid. You're wishing to educate, like just for education's sake, and I think it's so important to just be able to think of people that you might know that you could potentially employ as a consultant to work on specific projects, because obviously the view of somebody with a disability is completely different sometimes when it comes to what might be required for a product or a service. So that's another way you can get disabled people involved.
Yeah, I think that's really important to
Mhm.
be as inclusive as possible and to continue to learn and educate, especially if you own a business and especially if you're employing a lot of folks. So,
Mhm.
what are some of the obstacles folks with disabilities might have when it comes to sex?
So some of the obstacles that people might face when it comes to sex, I'm like a lot of dexterity issues. I have this myself, in terms of like reaching and then how much you can press certain toys, or this is just like with self pleasure, obviously. But yeah, the reaching thing is massive for me, like to the point where I've had to kind of repurpose some toys, because I prefer like a bullet style, like clit stim toy, but sometimes the reach just isn't there. So using something like a G-spot stimulator, it's good because it comes with, obviously a bit of length to it because it's for internal stimulation, but you can actually use it and use the end of it as a vibrator. So another thing that might be difficult is positioning. There's a lot of things that obviously people with disabilities might need, myself included. With my partner, he has to do a lot of the moving around. So communication is definitely key there. And so things like straps that are really fantastic. There's a doggy strap by Sport Sheets that you actually put underneath the hip, and it allows your partner to pull you up and sort of control that position for you, so you don't have to think about like maintaining that position and energy, because it's kind of down to them. Unfortunately for my partner, it does fall to him a lot on the energy. Where I'm draining his energy quite a lot. But it's always worth it, I assure you. And another thing that disabled people can use for sort of sex and during sex is their lifts and hoists at home. I think in the US you call them Hoyer lifts, but in the UK we just call them ceiling track hoists or mobile hoists. And it's kind of like a mobile sex swing, which is amazing. And that can help with positioning, and allowing you to be on top if you want to be on top, because a lot of these hoists are electric as well, so you can actually control it with a remote, so it can lift you up and down or across wherever you need to be over the bed, and allow you to be in midair whilst having sex, which is also great.
Ooh, I don't know what this hoist
I
looks
know.
like, but I have a really interesting image in my brain right now. Does that just attach to your ceiling? It just like fixes to your ceiling?
Yeah, so I've got one. Mine's a ceiling track one, and it runs on a track literally on my ceiling. So it looks a bit like a coat hanger when it comes down, and you're sat on a sling, it's like a piece of fabric with an attachment, which does look like a sex swing, to be fair. And you just attach that to the coat hanger, and then you're good to go.
That's kind of a genius sex toy idea, or not sex apparatus idea.
Yeah,
for some companies out there that could, because maybe they could make attachments that would be even specifically purposed for sex positions.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people about this actually. Sport Sheets being one of them, because they have also the G-spot link, which ties your ankles or thighs together, and you can actually use that to keep your legs behind your partner. So it's like an awesome add-on for something like that as well.
So it ties. Oh, I'm trying to get the visualization for this. So it ties your feet or your ankles together.
So your ankles, yeah. So it can be behind your partner's back, essentially. So it could be used in like a missionary position.
Got it. Your legs are kind of wrapped around them.
Yeah, so it's to stop them from like flopping to the side or getting tired. So it's used for like able-bodied people and disabled people. But it's just it's really cool. It's awesome. It means that you're able to not worry about getting tired or your legs sort of giving up on you, because you've got that security there to know that you can maintain the position, which is really good to keep you out of your own head.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about specific toys in a little bit, because I know that folks love the sex toys and tips on what toys to buy for what. And so we'll get specific in a moment. Before that question though, I have like a two-parter here, Kelly.
Okay.
So what are tips for folks with disabilities to have more pleasure? And obviously there are so many different humans out there and so many different folks with different, different disabilities. So tips for those folks as best as you can. And then what about tips for their partners? If you're partnered with someone with a disability, how can all of these folks have more pleasure in their lives?
Okay. So for the first part, for people with disabilities, I'll share like a bit of my past maybe. And like I said to you before, I was quite a rebellious, outgoing teenager that got myself into a lot of trouble when it came to like sex and sexual encounters. I was so eager to have sexual experience and to put myself out there. Like I rushed into a lot of things that I wish that I hadn't have done now. And I think that it's really important to like get to know yourself, get to know your disability, get to know, like, to have self-love and practice that before you go out searching for pleasure from other people, because it can lead to sort of dangerous situations. I've been in situations before where I've been in hotels with, you know, strangers, and, you know, we've all done it, or some of us have, but it's a bit different, you know, when you are disabled, because not only do you want someone to perhaps help you onto a bed, but you've got to rely on them to get you off the bed and let you leave the room, which it's something that I look back on now and I think, oh my goodness, like, why did I put myself in that position? But it's like the power of hindsight, really. I've also been in a situation where I've been on the floor of a car and like literally completely in the middle of nowhere, like relying on other people. So I think my advice with that is obviously embrace your pleasure, embrace self-love, and figure out what you need from somebody and try and communicate that prior to the experience. Because if you don't, I think you're in your head worrying about all the practicalities, and two, it's just pretty dangerous and something you really need to consider if it's right for you. And don't rush as well, because that's something that I really regret now, and thinking it's all about sex and sexuality, which for me is, I absolutely love sex. Sex is a massive part of who I am. But, you know, it's not the be all and end all to get it all done quickly. So kind of try and find that within yourself first. That's excellent
advice. I love that advice. I think nailed it.
So often the answer is like, it starts with you.
It starts with you.
Yeah, start with your self-pleasure practice. Figure out more about what you like.
You could pay for a sex worker, though, if from the side of safety, if you wanted to, someone that checks out. That's another option for someone, instead of just.
Too bad they got rid of Red Book, which had reviews for the sex workers. It was sex. They had, I know it had reviews for the clients, but it maybe had reviews for the sex workers too. But the whole Sesta Fosta thing got rid of this access to being able to really to check people out. And unfortunately, that's not the case. One other thing that I thought of that you were speaking to is, but for a lot of folks, I believe, have this misconception that folks with disabilities aren't sexual. You know, they decided that whether it's a physical disability or a mental disability, that they must not be sexual, which I think is just really, really harmful. And I remember being in elementary school, and there was someone there who I forgot his name. I won't say on the air, but he had autism, and they interviewed him in junior high, and he couldn't. I forgot how they interviewed him, but his speech was limited. And so, you couldn't really have a conversation with him, but somehow they interviewed him, and he was sharing that he has massive crushes on people. And he actually feels, I don't think he said, it was junior high. So he said like sex and desire, but he's saying like he has, crushes and has desire in his own words. And I think I was one of those people who was in that, it really changed my life. I was like, oh my God, I was totally putting someone in this box, deciding that they weren't a sexual person. And so I think that's just something for other folks to take away, is that we can't make this judgment about someone based on, whatever it is, their looks, or if they're in a wheelchair, they're not in a wheelchair, and decide they are sexual, they're not sexual. And
definitely.
Yeah, which is just so harmful.
It happens a lot. You'd be so surprised. Well, you wouldn't from what you've said, but for me, up till, I want to say like I'm 32 now, and it's been quite recently that I've had people say to me, have you ever had a boyfriend?
Oh,
Have you
God.
ever kissed anyone? And it's like, dude, I've got 2 kids, so they obviously came from somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow, that would irritate me.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Yeah. That's,
Well, I was talking to my friend who's in a chair about it, and she was like, Kel, you wouldn't say that to an able-bodied person. And I was like, I don't know, maybe that person would. And she was like, no, you just wouldn't say that. And I thought, yeah, maybe she's right. Maybe he wouldn't say that to an able-bodied person. So it's like that stigma that people with disabilities are completely asexual, which couldn't be further from the truth.
yeah. That's, I think that there's still a lot of work that can be done around that. And just so many ways that people judge whether it's disabilities or not, that we just are quick to judge. So we talked about some sex toys earlier, and our listeners love talking about sex toys.
But I have a 2-part question.
Oh, you do? What you got?
The other piece was
you do, yeah. I needed to
tips
come back
for
to it.
people that are partnered with folks with disabilities, and how to tap into pleasure in their lives as well.
Yeah, I think, a big thing, like for people that are partnered with people with disabilities, is a public perception thing as well. Like, do be prepared to be viewed as a martyr, because you will. Like, all my partners have had the, oh, aren't you good for going out with somebody in a wheelchair? And it's like, well, you don't know anything about me, you don't know anything about them. So it's a really, really strange thing to say. But yeah, in terms of pleasure, it really does. Again, I'm sorry to give this kind of answer, but it really does come down to communication and thinking and planning ahead. Like, that sounds really boring, but it doesn't have to be. The first time somebody ever used my chair in sexting was awesome. Like, I always thought about it and thought, well, hang on, if somebody said that, it would kind of cringe me out. But really, it was like thoughtful in a way, and I really appreciated it. And also, it gave me an idea of, when we were to meet, how things were going to go down. So you don't necessarily have to say, like, I don't know, when I meet you, is it okay if I pick you up and this happens? You can just talk about it in a sexy way and incorporate it into sexting, or incorporate it into conversation when you're talking about what you're going to do to each other. And it just makes it like you've already crossed that line, that boundary. So you don't have to then like meet and sit down and be like, okay, we're going to do this, I'm going to pick you up, I'm going to do this, because you wouldn't do that in any other situation. And it's good that it's already dealt with and you don't have to think about it. So I think communication and normalizing things as much as possible, and just it becomes a part of your life. I think anybody with a partner that's disabled will agree with this statement, that part of disability just becomes part of your daily life. You don't really think of it as like, oh, we're going to get up now. So to get up, I need to get out of bed, get Kelly's legs out the bed, and then help her into a chair. It just is like, okay, we're going to get up now. Do you know what I mean? It just becomes part of that easy breezy daily life. And I'm not saying every day is like that, because it's not. And sometimes having a disability is hard. But I think if you've got somebody that kind of just rolls with the punches and you just enjoy life together, then that's the main thing.
Yeah, that I think. Yeah, that's. I like that. Did you ask that question? I didn't hear that question. I think that's. Yeah,
I said I had a 2-part.
Oh, I didn't hear that 2-part there. Well, I missed that one.
She tuned out.
Yeah,
everyone.
tuned out. It's 9:30 in the morning, everyone. It's not this is not the golden hour for Amy.
That's great answers, Kelly. That's like really enlightening, I think.
And these are just so many things that I just haven't really thought about, like people being treated like a martyr. Oh, good on you for dating someone in a wheelchair. Aren't you wonderful? And you're like,
yeah,
that doesn't make me feel that wonderful. I wonder how that makes the partners feel. And then also I had a question for you. What was the sex? What did they say? How did they word it?
Oh, the sex. Oh my God. I can't actually remember the full wording now. This was like a long time ago. I've had a baby since then, so I've got baby brain now. Well, hopefully it's going, because he's 1, but it does take a while. I think it was something about bending me over my chair. So it was like including the chair, and then also assuming that I could do that, if you know what I mean. So that was cool, because it wasn't like, because some people say, you know, they see somebody in a wheelchair and they assume that they're paralyzed. I've heard this quite a lot, and it's like, well, no, there's so many different kinds of disabilities, and there's so many reasons that somebody might need a wheelchair. So it was already kind of a bit of knowledge on his part as well. So it was like, I assume that you can weight bear, and, you know, and then obviously if I couldn't, then I had the opportunity to say, oh, that won't happen, or, you know, just go with the flow, I guess, and then address that at a later date, that we couldn't actually do that. But no, I thought it was really awesome that they took the initiative to do that.
Yeah, I like them. I'm gonna bend you over. I just think it's hot no matter how you put it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hot. And I do love that you can also get more information from the person in this flirty kind of way. And it's non-offensive. It's cool. And maybe some other folks out there might be like, that would offend me, right? It's just up to you. And you can always set the stage for what you're into or what you're not. The communication piece, it is one of those, the age-old answers for everything. It's like communication. It starts with you, and you're like, God damn it! Isn't there just a switch I can just turn on?
Doesn't work that way.
Instead of the communication working on me, but
I think also creating spaciousness and not get it right, or do it perfectly right. Have some room to maybe mess up along the way. And if someone's like, actually, that doesn't work for me. I don't really love hearing my chair being brought into our sex life in a text or sex when I haven't really even met you or I've spent a lot of time with you. And I think that that's okay. For
definitely. It just opens it up for that conversation to be had. And, you know, like we talk about enthusiastic consent and how that doesn't always have to be, you know, is it okay if I do this now sort of thing. It can be sexy, and it's exactly the same for this. It can be done in a sexy way. It doesn't have to be just like, how do I pick up your leg or something like that? You know, it can be done in a sexy way, and that's important to remember.
Enthusiastic consent. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a nice buzzword or buzzword.
Big fuck yeah.
Yeah. Can I do this right now?
Exactly.
Fuck yeah. I want to.
You just have to be enthusiastic about everything. That's
well, and if you're not, then you know that's a no. So there you go.
I'm gonna wipe your butt right now.
Oh yeah. Ooh, see, now I want you to wipe my butt. See? You sold me on it. Okay. So the question I cut April off on was about sex toys, and we talked about some earlier, and you were talking about how you like bullet vibes, but sometimes the reach isn't the best. And so you talked about various types. Maybe you just talked about sport sheets too, but are there specific products that you love right now? Like the names of products and how you use them and what you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, so going back to what I said earlier about the G-Spot stimulator, using it as a clip one, obviously the octopus curve, got to put it out there, is amazing for that. You know, I'm just all about like external stimulation and pleasure, so I use it for that, and it's perfect for me because then, like I said, I don't have the reach problems that, you know, I normally have. So that's a great way to use that as well with the treble and bass technology, which is awesome.
And it has a squishy head. I love this squishy head. I think you all call it squidgy. Squidgy, yeah. Squidgy head. And I have to say I'm external too. And I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have sold out of this toy though. We launched in February 2021. It's now the end of May. We've sold out of it 2 times. It's been a huge hit. And I typically I struggle orgasming from toys that aren't designed for, that are designed for internal use. I can usually only use the external one. And that curve, it's curve with a K, can get me off. Amy doesn't have one yet. I have to give her one, but we're sold out.
My curve?
Can't give her one yet. I'm like, okay. But it's incredible, the sensations, because you can customize it. And that has that high pitched, high frequency treble, and then that low, deep, rumbly bass. And you can turn one off and use both or simultaneously. It's a really, really cool toy. And I think the fact that we've sold out and people are reordering it on the business side is amazing. And I'm so happy that you love that toy too. And that it gives you that more reach and the softness. So it's not just putting a blunt, hard object on your external bits.
That's exactly right. Because some of the like G-spot stimulators are like plastic and hard, and it doesn't feel too good on the clit. But no, that's one of my current faves. I actually just got this new toy yesterday as well, and I've only used it like once. That's like basically telling you guys that I wanked last night, but it's part of my job.
It's shameless
Every day a wank a day keeps the doctor away.
I agree with that statement. Like Josh literally called me a teenage boy the other morning because of the amount of times that I have to do it. But anyway, so I tried this new one, and it was the I'm not sure if you've seen it, but the BuzzFeed and Bellesa collab toy.
Oh.
Have you seen it?
No.
So this is a really good one for people with disabilities. Well, some people with disabilities. For like dexterity in terms of pressing buttons, it's not the best, but you could turn it on before you use it, which is another option that I tend to do. So it's, the clit suction toys.
Love them.
So it's clit suction, and it's internal as well. So it's kind of like a U shape, but then it's flexy, so you can actually straighten it out or mold it to the shape that you need, which is really, really cool. Like I need that because I'm always in like one position when I'm using toys. So it's important that I can actually, if it's an internal toy, that I can actually get it in there without assistance. Again, like reach and positioning is massive. So the fact it's flexible and you can actually move it like as much as you want is really cool as well.
And I just really like that toy again, Kelly. What is that called?
Yeah, so BuzzFeed, like the online news outlet, it's them collabing with Bellesa, which is they have their own toys, but also they do really good porn as well. So they call themselves the Netflix of porn.
Oh, I remember
BuzzFeed and Bellesa.
Is it Bellesa or
Bellesa?
Bellesa, yeah. Sorry, is it the accent?
Yeah, that's okay.
No, my accent.
Love your accent.
I feel like it sounds better when you say it anyway.
Oh wow, it's so interesting. BuzzFeed made a sex toy.
I wouldn't have thought that. So.
I mean, they have a huge reach, so I'm not surprised.
And Bellesa
like,
does a lot of like very, I'll say, cis woman centered porn, right? It's very like voyeuristic and designed for women. Like think the soccer mom watches porn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that it's the good thing about that as well. Like I'm not like actually doing an ad for them right now, but you can actually pay what you want for their service as well. So you can pay what you can afford, like monthly and there's tons of videos on there, and some of them are really good. Like in terms of backstory, I'm like one of these that likes a bit of backstory in porn, and it's good quality as well, which is a massive bonus.
You need to know why the cable guy's coming over.
Why is the cable guy coming here?
Oh, my TV's not working. Right.
I need to know which
not
provider
working. Didn't the Hot Octopus also made the Solo? Wasn't that tested for folks who had disabilities where they were
spinal cord injuries,
and it works really well for you? You can explain that
it
better
does.
than I can. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure Kelly knows about a lot of that too. Because you obviously work with Hot Octopus on these things, and I'm sure you also are an advocate to recommend these products too for folks so they can feel comfortable shopping at Hot Octopus for their specific needs. So if you want to speak
a great
to
one for penis owners
for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that we're talking about the Pulse Solo and Pulse Duo. At the moment. So that, it's great for penis owners. And like you said, it's great for people with spinal cord injuries or people that experience erectile dysfunction, because you can actually use the toy flaccid, which is amazing. I've heard only great things about it from the people that I've recommended it to, but also the Duo is a great couples toy, and a couple of my friends, I hope they won't mind me saying this, but they are both wheelchair users. They both struggle with fatigue. So when they don't want to have full penetrative sex, it's a great like mutual masturbation tool for them to still feel close and have that orgasm moment without actually having to have the exertion of full penetrative sex. So that's probably the best review that I've got of it so far, because they're like, this is our go-to. And when you hear that, especially working with the brand, you're really proud, I think.
Yeah. And the remote controls, I'm sure, really help, because we've got that Dual Lux with 2 remotes, so you can control each other's vibration and oscillation. And the technology is really cool. And I'm sure folks, that's why I didn't want to speak to it, because I speak to it all the time. I'm like, let me have someone else speak to Hot Octopus products, because I love that. I feel like that brand says since their beginning, Hot Octopus in 2013, they've been changing people's lives. And folks, not only with that have disabilities or mobility issues or dexterity issues, because the digit, which I'm sure you were going to talk about too, and this is not just about Hot Octopus. Kelly's been talking about other toys too, but we really do focus around inclusivity with Hot Octopus. And that's why I chose to come on board with them, because I really loved reading the reviews about people like talking about how they hadn't been able to have any experience with their partner. Their husband had a prostatectomy in 2000 and hadn't been able to achieve an erection, and the solo or the duo was the only way they had any sort of interaction with one another, other than what they were so used to, because it can be really limiting, right? Or it can also be it can be shameful for the person too. So having access to toys that were based on medical science that are now available for the masses for pleasure, I think is really cool. So sorry, we're talking about Hot Octopus so much, but it's just really fucking cool brand.
Well, not all.
Just to
sex
touch
toy
on
brands.
the digit as well. Oh, sorry. Sorry. We're like going on a Hot Octopus tangent.
I know we're on a rant.
But I just wanted to say about the digit, one other thing that's been great is obviously it fits to the fingers, right? So you can actually obviously slip that on your fingers like a ring, or if you don't have the mobility in your hand to be able to put on a ring like that or open the hand, you can actually slightly almost unclip it and then fasten it to your hand as well. So it is actually really accessible for people that need more assistance with getting things on their hand. So it becomes that wearable sex toy. And it's, once it's on there, it's pretty good on there. It doesn't tend to move too much.
Yeah. I think, and I was saying, not all sex toy brands even consider these kind of things. So it's cool that Hot Octopus actually puts the time, energy, research, and they're hiring you to help them out, consultants. And they've been also on this path since day one, whereas a lot of other companies maybe aren't doing that. And I think some are starting to go in that direction. And you mentioned Sport Sheets, and I don't know if they just created some products that work for folks with disabilities, or they actually did the research. It just kind of happened that way. But I think that it's wonderful to see brands that are more inclusive for all different bodies instead of just all able bodies, and that's this part of this modern day and age. It's time.
Positioning pillows were something that we've talked about before, I think with you, Kelly. And positioning pillows are, because you talked about the straps, but that's another solid recommendation for folks.
Like Liberator,
like the Liberator,
definitely.
like the wedge.
So, the Liberator wedges are something that we are going to be pushing, hopefully through our disability hub. And they're absolutely amazing. Like, again, it is literally just, you put it under your hip or wherever you want it. Even under your back, for like deep penetration in missionary. They can be used in line with hoists and things like that as well, which is great. So they're just, it's another thing where you've not got to think about holding that position. And for people with disabilities, it's often a fatigue thing or a pain thing. So if you are able to rest on something, and something that's sexy and not medical, it's definitely preferred. And you can just focus completely on pleasure then, which is what everybody wants, right?
And there's also there's so many items out there that I'm just coming to my brain from when I worked at a sex shop, when I worked at Pure Pleasure back in the day, but they're still relevant. Like the hand harness, we used to sell those to folks.
I don't know if they make it anymore.
Really?
I am not sure. It's by Spare Parts.
Hey, Sport Sheets, if you're listening right now, start making a hand harness.
It wasn't a top seller, but for folks who purchased it, they said it was amazing. It was this neoprene, almost like wetsuit material hand harness that looked kind of badass. You put a dildo right in your palm, and you could fuck someone or make love to someone.
Could put it on. There's like legs.
There's thigh harnesses.
Thigh harnesses too.
That's the Sport Sheets one.
Yeah. Then you have a dildo just coming out of your thigh.
I think that's pretty awesome anyway. Who doesn't want a dildo coming out of their leg? Like come on.
I want to fuck someone with my thigh. My thigh is really powerful. I could probably do some wild things with this thing.
Just opening the doors for creativity and thinking about the needs of all sorts of folks to have more pleasure, I think is really inspiring All right. So that was good with product recommendations. I think that we gave people some really great options to choose from and brands. Definitely Hot Octopus, of course, but they're the best. So when it comes to people, if they want to find you, work with you, your podcast, all of your handles, can you share with everyone out there how to find Kelly Gordon?
Of course. So my own handle is at Miss Kelgee, which is MS KELGEE. So that's me. That's a quite complicated one out the way. Obviously at Hot Octopus. And then the podcast is Pleasure Rebels. It's on every podcast platform, but also on the website. We've got our own Pleasure Rebels page, which that keeps you up to date with every single episode, gives a cheeky discount code if you want to get the curve or the digit or any of the products that we've just talked about. And yeah, that's about it really. Just hit me up and come and find me. And any questions that anybody has, I'm happy to answer those.
And Pleasure Rebels is just about sex and pleasure in general. It's not just disability focused, right? It's actually just an educational forum for all kinds of things, including disability.
That's completely right. And, it's actually a place for me to go on a little sexual journey and find out more about certain things as well. Like we've had a really, really sort of varied range of episodes. We've had you guys on the show, which is great. We've had like Medina from Cocktails just going crazy about her previous sex life and her college days and things like that. And then we have gone for some disability related episodes where we discuss things like internalized ableism, which is something really important to talk about. We've got a BDSM episode with Off the Cuffs, and that was really enlightening for me because I haven't really done anything like that for quite some time. So just to hear about other people's kinks and fetishes, I just find it so interesting. So I'm literally trying to take like Pleasure Rebels listeners onto this journey of exploration, and I'm learning as I go as well. So I absolutely love recording the show.
Well, Kelly, it's been a joy. I absolutely just adore you and the work that you're doing. And thank you for joining Shameless Sex. And check out Pleasure Rebels, everyone. It's a really fun. It's fun to just listen to Kelly speak in general, but it's a fun podcast.
Is it the British accent?
It probably is. Maybe I have a British accent fetish, but
it's more than the British.
It is. It is. It's all of what you offer. So thank you, Kelly. And to all of our listeners out there, we love you. We'll see you next Tuesday or next Friday, because this is a bonus episode. That's right. Ad free. You're welcome. We'll see you next week. Ciao for now. Want to learn more? Go to shamelesssex.com.
And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use code SHAMELESSSEX at purepleasureshop.com.